Yo, welcome to Six Slayers, the comic signature show, period. I'm Mike the Six Slayer, chilling with Mark the Honorable Villain. What up, fam?
What's up, Mike? We have one of the most connected men in comics. He keeps on proving that. He knows the mafia. Let him know who we got, Mike.
Today, we have Illuminati member Jim Krueger with us, superstar writer. Before we chat with Jim, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and please comment. All right. Our next guest is a veteran in the comic industry. You may know him for his longtime collaborations with heavyweight artist Alex Ross. That's right, the writer of Justice and Marvel's Earth X series is here, but he's here to promote his new book, The Frankincense Monster and Other Creepy Christmas Stories. Ladies and gentlemen of the Stash Land, we bring to you the one and only Jim Krueger. What's up, Jim?
Hey, so happy to be here. So happy to be talking about Christmas. I love it so much.
It's great,
Creepy
man. You
Christmas.
got the festive background. We love it. We're going to just dive right on in, get into the meat and potatoes. Jim, The Frankincense Monster and Other Creepy Christmas Stories is available on Amazon for pre-order. What do you want people to know?
Well, one, that this is part of two books. Next year, I Saw Mommy Killing Santa Claus and Other Twisted Holiday Tales will come out. So,
Okay, cool.
Frankincense Monster is 13 stories. Next year is 12 because my goal was to have like an advent calendar of holiday horror so that someone could read a different short story every day. You know, it's definitely for the whole family, but I mean, that's also, it's more four quadrants than, hey kids, let me read you Poison Cookies,
Jim, you're a distinguished writer in the comic book world. What made you want to tell Prose story this go around?
I think it was just because, first of all, I had this idea that it would be good to begin writing short stories and writing in this way and all that kind of thing. And then it was kind of like an itch I had never scratched. Like it was more like, could I do this? Would this work? How would these work? And some of these stories go back years and years and years. I remember living in New Jersey and, I had a couple friends and I would send them and we would meet at a place called Charlie Brown's, eat burgers and talk about the new Christmas story, what worked, what didn't work. And so this has been one of those like lifelong projects where every time I'm struck by something Christmassy, I would write it down. Like I haven't written all the stories for book 2 yet, but I know what they are.
And Jim, can you go more into depth? What are the differences in preparing to write a prose story versus a comic story? Is writing prose easier? Is writing a comic easier?
I think writing a comic is easier, but I shouldn't say that because there are probably so many great writers that would say, oh no, you're totally wrong. I mean, one of the big differences is, when I think about movies or TV, and then when I think about comics, and then when I think about prose, comics are kind of this midway point, but they're the same thing. They're different. Like with a comic, you have both the internal monologue, the internal sensibility and feelings and things, but you also have someone visualizing it. So maybe comics are easier because it becomes someone else's job to visualize it. Where in prose, you have to spend the time figuring out what are the visuals that you want the reader to get, while also recognizing that they're going to bring, because it's not a drawn page, they're going to bring also their own interpretations of the words I use. So it's, I shouldn't say anything's easier. I should just say, it's all hard. How's that?
And Jim, we read somewhere that you did volunteer work at the Children's Hospital and that you read The Frankincense Monster. The children, is there any truth to that?
It wasn't me reading it, but there are people who have performed it in children's hospitals and all around, and because that's one of the earlier stories I wrote and people really loved it. So yeah, some of that happens. And I host this bi-monthly party called Comic Book Sunday. And this thing, well, last time we had like 15,000 comics that we donated. but there's an organization called COPE, which is just like C period, O period, P period, and E period. They actually have people who, this is the wrong word, so it's not cosplay, but they'll costume up and go into children's hospitals and read them comics and sign the comics. If it's someone dressed as Spider-Man, or if it's Batman, or if it's Wonder Woman, they'll actually sign the comics for the kids.
I want to talk a little bit more about you as a writer, because we haven't asked this question to you previously. As a writer, definitely you appreciate writing on a different level than the average reader does. And so, from a comic standpoint, can you tell us which writers inspire you during your early development days and even now?
When I was a kid, it was all 70s Kirby. I remember there'd be local like carnivals and stuff like that. And I grew up in kind of rural Wisconsin. So when a carnival came, it was a big deal. And I remember, it was like get a ping pong in a fish, in a fish thing or whatever like that. And I remember, if you won, you could get some like 70 Captain Americas, and that stuff freaked me out. Like, for me, it's all about late 70s Kirby. So that was the first influence. It was like Commandy #7, the King Kong issue, was probably my first Kirby. So it was Kirby then. And then I want to say when I was like in high school, it was probably stuff like Fantastic Four and Marvel 2-in-1. That was Project Pegasus time. It was all that George Perez and John Byrne X-Men stuff. And that stuff freaked me out, and that taught me about kind of stories. Oh, and Frank Miller Daredevil. And that really gets to me in my college days, when ultimately I was beginning to go down this route and was beginning to practice my own scripts and stuff like that. And local comic shop would read my scripts and give me their feedback and all that kind of thing. So it was like Alan Moore's Swamp Thing freaked me out. Alan Moore's his super. I don't love Watchmen the way everyone else does. I think it's kind of mean, but that's because I'm a prude. I tell everyone that, just I'm a prude. Anyhow,
I feel you on the Watchmen though. I'm with you on that actually.
It's just kind of mean. I think it's mean-spirited, and I'm not sure after 12 issues of this world, I wanted the world to be saved in the end.
Right.
Anyhow,
Jim.
So it was definitely Alan Moore. And it was definitely Frank Miller. And then a little later on, it was Grant Morrison, especially Grant Morrison's Animal Man, his Zenith. His Zenith is like the greatest thing ever. If you haven't read Zenith, it's in my top 5 favorite comics to reread over and over again.
The 2000 AD stuff, right?
Yeah. It was also James Robinson Starman. It was Archie Goodwin, Walt Simonson, Manhunter. It was all that stuff made me look at different ways to tell stories and want to tell stories in different ways.
Jim, we had to throw this one in there. You're a magnet to superstar artists. Can you take us back to your experience writing a Matrix story with Tim Sale on art?
Oh, this is such an embarrassing story. Like, to this day, I think I have 2 truly embarrassing stories in the comic industry. Did I tell you the Todd McFarlane one?
No, give us both. Give us both.
Here's the Tim Sale one.
Okay.
Tim Sale one was, I loved Tim Sale's work so much, and this was before Long Halloween, and I was being given an opportunity to write my very first X-Men backup story that ultimately went into Excalibur 75 and is this great little Nightcrawler story that Tim drew. It was Tim's first work for Marvel to my first work for Marvel, and I still stand by it as a great story, and there's even something in it that became part of the Old Man Logan movie.
Oh, cool.
I won't say what it is, but that's where the idea came from, and I know that for a fact. Anyhow, but I called Matt. I was able to get Matt Wagner's phone number, and so I called Matt Wagner, and I praised him because I think Matt's work is so good, and went into this whole thing about how much I appreciate Matt Wagner, and then asked for Tim Sale's number. Awful. Like, such an idiot, not even thinking about anything. Spider-Man #1 comes out, and this is how I'm practicing writing comics. I take each page and I blow it up to 11 by 17, and then would white out like I could scan it and do it now, but would white it out and then would rewrite the comic. So I rewrote Spider-Man #1, Todd's first issue, blah 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 blah, and then later I gave it to him, like that summer, you know. I gave it to him, and now I realized years later, and then didn't have opportunities to go and apologize how really self-absorbed that was and presumptuous on my part. And so ultimately, and this was just a couple years ago at a Comic-Con, I was able to track him down, and I apologized, and he was so gracious and so kind, and he said, well, if I had known it was you who wrote it, I probably would have read it.
So,
Jim,
I mean, but hold on, I have to follow up. So,
go
I
ahead,
mean,
go ahead.
how did you give it to him? You just gave it to him like, look what I did? You were just proud that you like did some stuff over.
Yeah, I was like, maybe you'll want to work with a writer one day, blah, blah, blah. I was like, I wasn't like a kid, like 13, 14. No, I was already in my 20s there. There's no...
Oh, okay.
No.
Jim, I want to stay on that Matrix story. Did you have any direct communication with the Wachowskis during that time?
No. What was there was a guy I knew named Spencer, and he was putting the whole project together, and he was bringing together all the different artists, and I knew him from Marvel and stuff like that. And he said, I just want to see you and Tim work together again. And so he contacted Tim, and that's how that worked.
Okay. And Jim, we're already on our last question. Is there something that we haven't talked about, the Frankincense monster, that you want the fans to know about?
Oh yeah, so certainly. First of all, I should say that I love having the relationships I do in the comic industry, and so one of the guys I've worked with for years on different projects here and there is John K. Schneider, and he did the painted cover for the Frankincense monster book, and he's doing the painted cover for next year's as well. And John's just one of my favorite artists, and it's always great to work with him. And you'll even see on the cover that there are these little symbolic things that kind of wrap around the cover, and that's part of the advent calendar doors that can open up. So that's John K. Schneider, always grateful. And then the other part about this book is just that in some ways it's tying into Secrets of Christmas. Like there's a story about Jacob Marley, which is a prequel to A Christmas Carol. Because I always thought, well, it's kind of unfair that the spirits saved Scrooge and didn't even try for Marley. What's that about? Yeah. And that's how I usually even come up with ideas for stories. Like I'll look at something and be like, why didn't this happen? And then I have to solve that problem. There's another one, and I made sure I didn't cross any copyrights here, that suggests a secret origin to a certain rhyming villain of Christmas. And of course I can't name names, but there's that. There's another one about where Santa got his wife, and there's another one, that like some of the stories are just kind of tonal things, just to give kind of a feeling or a different imaginatory idea of Christmas. Then some of them are like more epic and bigger stories. And I should mention that I even put a story that I wrote for my mom years ago that's kind of called The Haunting Doll, which is a true story of her carrying this battered doll through Nazi-occupied Poland, and how that doll still haunts those who knew it to this day.
The Frankincense Monster and other creepy Christmas stories will be available on Amazon really, really soon because it's selling out like hotcakes. Jim, thank you so much for joining us, man. I just want you to know you always have a home here on a Six Layer Station, man.
Awesome. Always happy to talk with you guys. It's really always fun.
Thank you, brother. Well, that's all for our show. If you like what you see, please subscribe and hit the like button. This is Six Layers. I'm Mike, speaking for Mark and Jim Krueger. We are out. Peace.
Six